Hey, it's Drew Neiser with another Tuesday tip. We just spent a good 40 minutes talking about responding to crisis. Obviously, Ukraine is right there. Terrifically challenging situation, particularly if you had employees on the ground. Paige O'Neill, what is your tip for responding to crises?
One of the things we learned through responding to the Ukraine crisis is that be prepared that your employees are going to want to get involved and help. There's going to be a groundswell of empathy. And so as you're planning your communications, make way to let employees help with ways that they can support whatever is happening at that time of crisis.
I think it's such a good point, and it's one that you might not have anticipated, particularly when you have other employees involved. Okay, Bernd Leger, CMO of Mimecast, what is your tip?
Think through like what kind of crisis might happen and pick one, simulate that once a year at least, so that you've kind of done a fire drill and you've learned from that and you're prepared for when it actually happens.
So let's talk about that. What does that look like? I mean, do you have a playbook in advance? Do you set up do you say, okay, we have a crisis on this and let's pretend? I mean, how do you do this?
In our case, we thought through like what are some of the things that might happen, and we use one of those examples. Maybe pressure test. Do we have that really thought through, and do we have a playbook that's adequately situated for that? And then we see how well we performed against it, and then we learn from that.
Amazing. Okay. Shirley Macbeth, Forrester. Shirley, what is your tip?
My tip is to be authentic to your brand when you think about how and when to respond to crises or a lot of things. We talked in this discussion about there's an appetite from employees and from others to respond to everything. And as a brand, you have to have your filter to think about what makes sense for our brand, and then how does our response fit with our values. So I'd say, be authentic, think with your brand, and that'll help guide your discussion.
Yeah. And I thought that was really interesting as the various brands in the huddles talked about, well, this is their swim lane and they can be comfortable where they're coming from. And I think it's really important. I'm wondering if you have a don't when it comes to crisis. Paige, what's your don't?
Don't hesitate to be transparent about the rationale that you have when you're putting together your playbooks and your responses, because, I think that transparency is so important right now, and holding back as a management team, as a leader in an organization is going to cause employees to question needlessly.
Okay, great one. Bernd.
Don't ignore to show empathy to the key stakeholders who you're trying to communicate with, either if they're internal or external. Think about your customers, think about your employees, and ensure that that empathy is always there.
Yeah. And I think this is a really important point along with all of this, which is we're talking about this because the CMOs need to be thinking about this, because you are the ones who define the communications for the company to employees, customers, and prospects. And this is at the center of it. Okay, Shirley, one last don't.
Don't forget to be human. We're talking to humans, our brands, and how we respond sometimes gets so complicated in language and legalese. We're humans. So think of everything through a human lens.
Well, and I think we are talking about human crises here. And it's not just the implications of this. And as we talked about in the huddle, I mean, if you have 200 employees in the Ukraine and you have to suddenly relocate them, it's a very human situation. Okay. Thank you for this amazing discussion and tip. If you're a CMO who can share, care, and dare with the best of them and want to be part of conversations like this, check out CMO Huddles. I'm Drew Neiser, and that's your Tuesday tip.